Hi, and thank you for joining us for this session, Living Well After Cancer. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Color Street, for making this session possible. An ovarian cancer diagnosis can impact every aspect of your life, emotionally, physically, psychologically, and spiritually. And I'm thrilled that Dr. Sage Bolte is here with us again this year with some inspiration and advice on how to live your best life after cancer. Dr. Bolte, an oncology social worker by training, is now Chief Philanthropy Officer and President of Inova Health System Foundation. You can view her full bio here on the conference website. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Bolte, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is that you are watching it. My name is Sage Bolte, and I work for Inova Health System. I am so excited today to talk to you about living well. Today, we're going to talk about the various ways that cancer can impact our emotional and relational well-being, two areas that we know we mostly can control, not always, but mostly. We're going to explore and understand negative and stressful triggers and responses, identify at least 3 ways to improve our emotional well-being, 3 ways to improve our relationships, and hopefully leave you feeling like you have more tools in your toolkit to improve your overall well-being. Before we get started, I think it's really important just to acknowledge that being diagnosed with cancer, with ovarian cancer, is a life-altering experience. We can never go back to the way life was prior to hearing those words that you have cancer. We can live well, we can live strong, we can live into life, even in the midst of uncertainty. But I think sometimes we are dismissive of the fact that hearing the words "you have cancer" also change and alter the way we perceive our world. We weren't aware of that waterfall at the edge of this beautiful river. And as we hit that, there's a lot of losses that we experience. Some of those losses are things we also gain, right? There may be some losses within friendships, but the gaining of others. Yet grief and the grieving of what was does not mean that you can't grieve and be grateful, that you can't grieve and be hopeful, that you can't grieve and still see a future. And I think that's an important concept that I want us just to kind of keep in mind today as we talk about and look at ways that we can live well. And much of that is this concept of living in the and. Oftentimes with emotions, we have this idea that we can only feel one feeling. I can only be sad. I can only be angry. I can only be hopeful. And we as complex beings and beautiful beings actually have the capacity to have multiple feelings and multiple what we might perceive as conflicting feelings. And in our emotional roller coaster of life, we can be grieving and hopeful. We can feel relief and be scared. We can have fear of the known and be hopeful for the unknown. We can be exhausted and annoyed with these questions of, but aren't you done with treatment? And still have incredible grace and patience for people's just ignorance sometimes. There's so many things that contribute to our emotional roller coaster during and after a cancer diagnosis, and giving ourselves that space and grace to have both feelings, to have multiple feelings is important, but also to acknowledge that the emotional roller coaster is just that. We're going to have highs, we're going to have lows, we're going to have highs, we're going to have lows, we're going to have times where it feels like we're coasting. All of those are normal and okay. And yes, certainly I understand that many of those are exhausting. And so we have to accept that there are multiple emotions that impact our well-being. There are multiple factors that impact our well-being. And if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, that foundation, if that foundation is not settled, is not strong, nothing else can really be strong either. So that physiological need, the need for housing and food and water and clothing, that foundation is really critical. And if that's rocky for you, that's where you focus first, is how do I get my fundamental needs met first? And then we can start building on feeling safe and secure, building on our relationships, building on the way we feel about ourselves, and then living into who we are as a person. And as we think about living into who we are, a huge part of that is our emotional well-being and how we take care of ourself. So we're going to explore in the next several minutes together some of the common triggers that may make our emotional self feel unstable, may make us feel excitable, irritable, scared, and how we might respond to some of those triggers in our everyday life to just feel more grounded, less reactive, and more solid. And again, there is nothing wrong with being reactive. If I get bad news about a scan or a test, my initial reaction will be fear or anxiety. And I can call upon those tools to reground myself so I take in the information, so I'm able to hear, so I'm able to think about next steps with my logic mind rather than my irrational or emotional mind. So let's talk about triggers. And triggers are common for anyone after a cancer diagnosis, and things that we don't always anticipate. So you may be coasting along and realize that you haven't seen the doctor in a few months, and you're wondering when that might be. And suddenly, instead of feeling relief that you don't have to go back for treatment for a while, there's anxiety of nobody's laying hands on me. Who's looking at me? When was the last time my blood work was looked at? When am I getting scanned next? That is a common trigger. Anniversaries of your diagnosis or of a surgery or of a treatment starting or ending, a death of a friend, or even a celebrity that gets media attention that's a newly diagnosed cancer. And it doesn't have to be the same cancer as yours, but can recreate what again, that triggering feeling of what it felt like when you were in the thick of it, or the fear that maybe you felt, or the sadness that maybe you felt, or maybe the hope that you had at one time. Another trigger can be the illness of a family member or a friend, and recognizing that you start to feel some of the things that maybe they're feeling, or you have undue anxiety about your own health because you're watching a friend or a loved one go through their own illness. As I said, media attention, whether it's because it's a Cancer Awareness Month, whether it's because a celebrity or a famous person has recently been diagnosed with cancer or an illness, or someone dies, that can be triggering and, again, alerting to our central brain and our amygdala, that thing that fires the fight or flight in us. There can be physical symptoms that are triggering. Oh, my abdomen's hurting. Oh, my bones are hurting. Could it be? Right? That immediate, I have a headache. Oh my gosh, could it have spread? That can be triggering. And so again, as we learn to identify the triggers, those initial thoughts, we then have the power to respond to them in ways that can calm them, that we'll talk about. Impending medical visits or concerns that your family might have. Hey, you haven't talked to the doctor recently. Why are you expressing so much pain lately? What is it about the way you feel that is making the family anxious? And why am I internalizing that, right? Those kinds of experiences. Certainly even just a new prescription can sometimes bring up medical recall, or going for a follow-up visit and the smells of the hospital or the smells of the clinic, or the smell of the perfume that the nurse that cared for you has that you smell while you're walking through the mall. All of those, again, can trigger our senses, our memories, which can bring us back to a very real experience of feeling like I'm right back in it, or I am needing to run, I am needing to freeze, I am needing to fight. And that's that stress response. So if we look at what a stress response is, coming from the work of Herbert Benson, we can see how the brain perceives our thoughts and how our body reacts. So the amygdala, that limbic system that you see there, that is the fight or flight center of the brain, and it's activated when it perceives a threat. So an example, you walk into a room and you hear screaming. The amygdala makes an assessment. Danger, 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 somebody's screaming, something's wrong. Chemical messengers are sent to the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenals, and then a cascade of hormones throughout the body. Cortisol, which increases blood sugar, epinephrine or adrenaline, and norepinephrine, which constricts blood vessels and increases blood pressure. It makes your heart beat faster. So your blood pressure rises, your heart races, your muscles tense in preparation for what you are going to find, in preparation for what you might see in response to the screaming that you just heard. You turn the corner and you realize it's just a TV show that your teenage son is watching. It was screaming on TV, and suddenly the brain processes that's not danger. And you notice that even though the brain recognizes, oh, that's not danger, that body is still wound up. There's still a heart palpitation. There's still tension in your muscle. Your breathing might be restricted or different. And although, again, your amygdala has been able to identify that it's just a movie, the stress response, the sympathetic nervous system that was just activated, takes a little time for it to begin to shut down. You know, there's actually some research using functional MRIs, so when they're looking at your brain while you're doing something, has shown that when the amygdala is all fired up, it draws blood away from the prefrontal cortex, here where our logic mind is, which is decreasing activity in that area. So the reactions would be we can't concentrate, we're not able to remember, we have trouble paying attention, we can't think clearly. So again, you know, when we think about that firing of the amygdala, that constant panic, the fear, is it going to be a scan that's bad? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? Where we feel like we're walking on eggshells or we're in that fight or flight mode. That logic mind isn't accessible. We're not taking in information. We're not remembering things the same way. We're looping on fear. And we can certainly in those experience, you know, think about relating to accidents as we watch and see an accident, and we constantly reconstruct what could have been different or how it might have been different. That movement is activated and needs to learn to settle, to be back to our frontal lobe, our frontal cortex for logic mind. We know that in those stressful situations, right, a common and normal response to stressful situations is anxiety. And anxiety can, again, be triggered with a thought that leads to a feeling, which leads to a body and physical response, which then leads to behavior. So if I'll use a very real experience of if I see my child running out to the street, right? That initial thought of, oh my gosh, she's running out to the street. I have to get her. I run. I don't freeze. I run. The feelings and emotions that come up, hyperanxiety, vigilance, fear. My body is tight. My heart is racing. Again, that behavior that I get back, I start crying after I grab her, or I'm anxious or fearful, and everything is wound up. And then I recognize that she's safe. She's okay. She hadn't made it to the street. My initial anxiety of her getting to the street was just based on fear. And my heart rate begins to calm down. Anxiety and depression can persist because we have both emotional and cognitive reactions, which keeps the anxiety going, right? That negative cycle of anxiety triggered by an event, like a ticker tape, that thing that we can't let go of, that ticker tape of thoughts related to the event. I am going to think about the last time I got negative news from my doctor, and that event is going to be every time I'm going to meet with my doctor, I'm immediately going to go back to, it's going to be bad news. That ticker tape continues to play it's bad news. The feeling is anxiety, fear, that physical sense of I'm not in my body, I'm kind of out of my body, I'm tense, I'm tight. Maybe that behavior or action is I'm not hearing what my doctor is saying when he's actually giving me positive news, or I'm pushing people away because I don't want them to be close because I'm afraid of what's ahead of me, right? That impact on our body, our mind is so powerful. But the good news is, if we can take a step back and look at how this process works, we can actually begin to break the cycle and start managing the anxiety versus reacting to the anxiety. How do we respond and quiet it ahead of time? I want you to think about this quote. If life were a game where you were told that each day you'd be given $86,400 to use as you wish, but you have to spend it all, most of us would find a way to spend every last dime. I can imagine all the things that I could do for my family or buy for myself or solve for the community with $86,000 a day. But I want you to think about it this way. Each day is 86,400 seconds. 57,600 if you have a good night's sleep. How are you using your coin of time? How are you using those 57,000 seconds in your day? Are you using 10,000 of it worrying? Are you using 20,000 in giving back to the things that fill you up? Are the thoughts that you're having wasting those seconds? Because worrying won't stop the bad stuff from happening. It just stops you from enjoying the good. And I don't say that to be dismissive at all. This is by no means meant to say, just stop worrying. Because if we could just stop worrying, most of us are not wanting to be stuck in worry. We don't like the feeling of anxiety. We don't like the feeling of worry. So this isn't meant to say, just stop worrying. Or if you're worried about a scan, don't worry about those things. Of course, be diligent. Do what you need to do to make sure that you are the healthiest version of yourself. Ask the questions of your doctor. What we do have control over, though, is when worry is in control of us. Worry is going to happen. But how do we address it so that we are more in charge of our own worry? There are a few things that we can do that we're going to explore together. So one, a common cognitive behavioral therapist might say, like myself, reframing can be really helpful. So as scary as this might sound, accept the uncontrollable. What can't I control? And as a self-professed control freak, this one's hard for me. I believe I can control most things. I know realistically I can't. So what can I control? I can control how I respond to my thoughts, for sure. I can control how I respond to someone else's reactions or response. I can't control what the doctor's going to say, what the scan might show, what my blood work might show, other than some of my daily lifestyles that I can choose to help improve those things. So what I can focus on is the controllable. What can I focus on that will help me move forward? We can acknowledge our strengths because that's also going to help us not only focus on what we can control, but what we can move forward. So how can I apply my strengths to the situation? If your strength is resilience, if your strength is being able to be an advocate for yourself, if your strength is self-love and forgiveness and grace to others, grace to self, and using the positive. This does not mean blindly positive. This does not mean being Pollyanna and thinking everything will be great if we just think it great. However, how will using my strengths help me? How can I access the things that are strong to help me? And I might take that a step further and say, Who are the people around you that can support and help you and encourage you as well and lift you up when you feel yourself not being able to pull yourself up? So in that reframe, changing our thoughts, which is hard, especially as adults, we've kind of formulated ourself, the way we respond to situations. But could you think about using positive words like happy, peaceful, loving, enthusiastic, warm, instead of can't, shouldn't, scared, right? Can we think about even just inserting positive words, maybe sticky notes around your mirror in the morning that lift you up? We certainly can't always avoid using negative words, but can we challenge ourselves to pay attention to how often they're being used and switch it? Instead of, I'm afraid, I have all the people around me I need, right? Difference. We're not saying there isn't fear, but we're not focusing on the fear being what's driving. We're focusing on the fact that we have people around us that will support us. Try to avoid making a statement like, I'm not going to worry anymore. Those kind of blanket statements are impossible and they set us up for failure. So instead, I'm going to focus on the positive or whatever might feel right for you. Maybe it would be nice if. Shoulds are not very helpful. Shoulds, as Brene Brown and many other therapists in my career have said, shoulds are shoulding on yourself. And shoulding on ourselves usually leads to feelings of shame or guilt and don't take us in a positive direction. Can we focus on present tense instead of I want to be, I am, right? Instead of I want to be healthy, I am healthy. I am making choices today to keep my body as strong as possible. I am strong today. I am happy. I have a good job, right? The I, the me, and then can you take it a step further and really envision yourself, your realistic ideal, living into your ideal self? Other ways to identify a negative thought and change it, so that reframe. A thought like, I will never look the same. Offer a counter thought. I may never look the same, but I can make choices for myself right now that help me, support me, love me, right? I can then choose a positive behavior that helps me feel better about my body. I can exercise. I can take a walk. I can give myself an extra 10 minutes to get ready, or 10 minutes to rest, or 10 minutes to talk to a friend that lifts me up. So if we can identify that thought, again, not that I say I'm never going to worry, but I can identify that thought of worry or that thought of negativity. And instead of letting it be the end of the story, offer it a different option, give it a counter thought. Then choose a behavior that supports it. More examples. I'm not worth anything. How about I am a valuable person? And let me just stop for a moment and say again, negative thoughts, unfortunately, are really easy for many of us, especially in the society where we're bombarded by a lot of media that shows us what ideal is, and 99% of us are not living in that ideal. So negative thoughts are going to happen. And positive thoughts may not feel so reachable. They may feel hard. And you may need to make a list of positive thoughts that you literally read to yourself every day. But just like when we tell ourselves something negative, we believe it. If we begin to offer ourselves something positive and say it over and over and over, and we see ourselves living into that, we will begin to believe it. So, I have never accomplished anything. That's not true. You've accomplished many things. Think about just a simple task of learning to tie your shoes. That's a huge accomplishment for someone between the ages of 4 and 6. I don't deserve a good life. I do deserve to be happy and healthy. All of us deserve to be happy and healthy, right? Think of that negative, offer a positive, one that you can live into, not one that's dream state, but one that you can live into. Oops. Counter the negativity. When you think about how you might do that, go to your go-to list. So here's some ideas. I keep a list in my purse so I can pull it out. I also keep it on my handy phone in my notes section where I am able to pull it up at any point. So I want you to think about if you were to take 10 minutes today to write at least 5 things that identify your strengths. So persistence, friendliness, creativity. 5 things you admire about yourself, how you are as a friend, how you've raised your children, your grandchildren. The 5 greatest achievements in your life so far, like taking on a serious illness, graduating from high school, learning a new skill, like a computer skill. And then at least 20 accomplishments. And this is simple things. It can be, as I said earlier, learning to tie your shoes, getting an advanced degree, learning to cook something you had strived to cook, keeping a calendar and a schedule. For those of you who are parents, sometimes that in and of itself is a huge accomplishment. Getting our kids to school on time sometimes can be a huge accomplishment. Getting myself to work on time can sometimes be a huge accomplishment. What are some of those things you can write in your go-to list? 5 ways you can treat or reward yourself that don't cost anything. So this, although I love a good cup of coffee and I consider it a treat, what are things that I can do that don't require me driving somewhere necessarily? I can go outside. I enjoy nature. Can I go take an extra 5 minutes during my break? Just take it in. Is there a movie that makes me laugh, belly laugh so hard? Yes. Can I watch that tonight? Is there a friend that I just really enjoy being with and take time to treat myself to time with him or her? Laughter is so healing. And if you can find 5 things that make you laugh, simple things that are easy and accessible, that is a great tool and something to have on your list. I often refer to YouTube for things that can make you laugh, because you can make a whole list of your YouTube favorites. As silly as this sounds, if you've ever been on YouTube and seen babies giggling at the silliest thing, there's one that I use all the time if I'm in kind of a funk, of a dad who has probably a 9-month-old sitting on the floor in the kitchen, and he is tearing paper, and this baby thinks it is the funniest thing that he has ever seen, and he gets this laugh that has like the behind it that makes me cry with laughter every time. There's something so pure and joyful about a baby's laughter that for me can immediately shift my mood. Are there 5 things that you could do to help someone else? Giving is so healing. And then 5 things you can do to make you feel good about yourself, whether that's putting on a perfume that you really like, putting on makeup, putting on an outfit that you feel really good in, praying, listening to music. Again, this is your list. And then how can you be your own positive voice? So this is, again, another 10-minute exercise. Can you set a timer for 10 minutes and take a piece of paper, write your name across it, and list all the positive and good you can think about in yourself. And some of those you would have done in your previous exercise of making a list. I will tell you, the first time I did this, I struggled. And so I remember the instructor saying, try 2 minutes. Then try 5, because sitting for 10 minutes thinking about positive things about myself, it made me really uncomfortable. And I noticed that. And so stretching that out 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And by the end of 10, I was really able to lean into that. And are there things you can take from that and put on your window, put in your car, put in places that you look at regularly, at your desk, that are notes to encourage you, that have your positive voice, that lift you up, that challenge you, that remind you that you are good enough? Some daily actions that you can take to improve your emotional health. These are really basic, and sometimes they feel really challenging. Get enough sleep. Sleep varies for people, and it probably varies depending on where you are in your treatment process, but getting enough sleep is critical for healing. It's also critical for our brain health. So if you're struggling with sleeping, talk to your doctor about some options. The use of alcohol. If you can use alcohol in moderation, if at all, and they say less than 1 glass per day for women, but more and more are coming out saying, really limiting, if not at all cutting out alcohol, helps with so many factors of our body and our sleep and our overall well-being. Movement. I often hear, you must exercise 30 minutes a day. let me just shift that. When you are in the throes of chemotherapy, exercising probably seems and feels impossible. So I want to offer you a different word. Move. Move. Walk to your mailbox. Get up and walk around your couch 4 times. Walk your flight of stairs once or twice. Even if that means it's 10 times for 2 minutes, you've hit your 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be all at once, although that's the ideal to get your heart rate up and move. Can you move? Take a walk with a friend. Take a walk while you're in your house talking to someone if it's too hot outside. Your diet is so critical to your overall well-being and to your brain health. Can you think about, if you're struggling, meeting with a dietitian, an oncology dietitian, to get some guidance? But if you can limit refined sugars, eat a balanced diet that looks like very colorful, and don't skip meals. Can you reduce your caffeine? Really, truly, if you have the ability to eliminate caffeine, if you're struggling with anxiety, it's going to pay you back tenfold. Even a small amount of caffeine can cause tremendous anxiety. Making some time for yourself every day. This should be time for quiet and relaxation. And as a mom of 3, that usually means about 5 minutes. And oftentimes it's my shower time because I don't have a lot of other time where I'm not being interrupted or asked for something. Or it's my drive into work. Can you find time that you are intentional about, that you use that time for quiet and relaxation? For me, it's in my car. I turn on music that fills my soul and my spirit, or I listen to a mindfulness podcast that I can listen to while I drive. So are there things that you can do for yourself? Again, 5 to 10 minutes. It's not 45 minutes or an hour, but can you integrate time for yourself every day? When we think about choices for relief in our emotional well-being, first, again, when we think about self-care, our thoughts. We cannot help those automatic thoughts, but we can choose a better feeling thought. So I am sad, right? I can feel hopeful. We can choose thoughts that create better feelings in us as well. I can't do that. I am capable of so many things and have tons of evidence that could support that. Different feeling. One was feeling hopeless or helpless. The next, feeling strong, feeling less anxious, feeling confident, right? My heart, my body feels more confident. Shifting. Giving yourself permission to shift to better feeling thoughts. Sometimes if we've been stuck in a rut, or we've had experiences in our life where we have formed this framework of thinking of we don't deserve, or I can't, or I shouldn't, we don't always give ourselves permission to think better, to believe that we do deserve or can. So can you give yourself permission to shift to better feeling thoughts? And then release. Clarify what you want to let go of, even if you're not sure how. It is my intention to release this thinking that I can't. Again, I may not know how yet, but it is my intention to release this thinking that I can't, or this thinking that I'm not trying hard enough, or I'm not doing good enough. Think. We have the freedom to choose better feeling thoughts. Shift. We can give ourselves permission to do just that, to shift to better feeling thoughts. And release. Let go of what you don't want to hold on to. Even if you don't know what you're going to do in response, just the intention of letting it go. And oftentimes I'll imagine a balloon that I pop that thought into. And if it's something that I need to hold on to, like I really need to noodle that at another point, I'll keep that balloon loosely tied to my finger and it will hang there until I need to pull it back down, take it out, look at it, just make a decision and let it go. But if it's something I can let go of, let it go. Let it go. In addition to our emotional well-being, relational well-being is another factor of our overall living well during and after cancer diagnosis. So our relationship with ourself is so important. And part of that is the way we view ourselves. Body image is something that often gets dismissed because in our society, we feel as if we should just be grateful that we're alive, or hair will grow back, or that scar isn't that bad, or, it's okay, you can cover it up. But the reality is 31 to 67% of survivors struggle with body image changes. It could be as simple as a port scar that is a constant trigger or reminder of the experience. And body image evaluation, kind of how I evaluate that degree of which I am satisfied with my appearance, and whether there is a discrepancy of my satisfaction with what I see, my dissatisfaction, if that port scar suddenly has become my whole body, I have an opportunity to start shifting and making that smaller and smaller and smaller so that that one scar doesn't become my whole view of myself. Body image investment is the value or importance that one places on our appearance and our physical attributes. If I didn't care much before cancer about my hair, I'm probably not going to care much that I lost it. If it was my identity, it may have a significant impact on how I view myself during treatment, and one that I'll have to lean in and figure out how I can still make myself feel good, pretty, sexy, confident, whatever that next word might be. Body image concerns are so normal, and oftentimes patients struggle to identify it because they're afraid of, again, the dismissive nature, or they feel guilty or shameful that they shouldn't be worried about those things, but they are normal. Changes in the sexual self as well are a common experience in women with ovarian cancer. And certainly I know that there's a conversation during this conference on sexual health, but we know that changes in sexual health can range from decreased subjective pleasure on the body to changes in desire or libido to painful intercourse. And that can impact how one views one's body. And the changes in intimate relationship or relationships can add additional anxiety to the already stressful situation cancer can present to couples. And so being able to identify those stressors, talk to a professional to help you work through those stressors are really important. So how do you begin to connect with yourself and with others? First, I think it's really important that we redefine and communicate the new normal. Now, I know many people hate that word. They don't want a new normal. They want their old normal. They were very happy with their old normal. They don't want to redefine it. I can fully appreciate that. And the reality is cancer changes things, and our old normal, even if it sort of looks the same, it's never the same because we have a different lens in which we see the world. That new normal may change every day based on where you are in your treatment cycle, based on disease state, based on the crazy activities in your life, right? Fatigue may be really hard one day and the next day you feel fine. So giving yourself the space and place to redefine that new normal on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis, is really important. When we get frustrated is when we plan for it to be the same as it was and it's not. And then we find this disappointment. So if we can be gracious and explain that the normal today may look different than tomorrow, and I'm going to have to be somewhat open to the fact that I may not have the same energy I had yesterday as I do today, but I'm still going to plan, I'm still going to move forward while giving myself some space to have some grace with myself in those changes. Reminding what we said earlier when we were talking about our emotional health. Our relational health is the same. What do we have control over? We have control over our own thoughts and actions. We don't necessarily have control over other people's thoughts and actions. We don't have control over the friend who consistently says, "Have you bought that garlic I told you about?" We don't have control over the friend that says, "You really should go see this expert in Florida." But we do have control over how we respond to them. We also have control over how we perceive their good intended comments, right? They're well intended. They are said because they love us, not because they want to create stress. And so knowing how we can respond to thank you so much for your concern. I love how much you love me. I trust that my doctors have me on a really good path, and I would welcome you to come to one of my appointments with me. Also, how do you get to know yourself and your needs? And those needs, again, may be ever changing. So are you giving yourself time to get to know your new body, to get to know what does and doesn't feel good to you, to get to know what pushes your limits just enough that you feel good about it, or a little beyond that it is exhausting or stressful? Finding pleasure in sexual activities, again, is a great way to stay connected to your body in a sensual way. And that may look different as the lecture that you will watch on sexuality and intimacy, or already have, that may look different than the way it was. So getting back to connecting in a way that's intentional is so important in your partnership. Setting a date night, and that date night, if you're really tired, may be laying on the couch and cuddling and watching a movie. It may be looking at a family video that makes you both laugh. It could be simple things, or it could be going out and enjoying a night out. Sensate focus exercises, whether it's for yourself or your partner, is just the gentle touch of your body. Again, getting to know, without the erogenous zones, what feels good on your body to be touched and what doesn't. Knowing that is so empowering, because then you have the ability to tell your friend or your partner or partners, what feels good to be touched? Does it feel good to get a foot massage? Does it feel good to be kissed? Does it feel good to be held? Where on your body doesn't feel pleasure? Where does it? Finding quality time with the people that lift you up is really important. And I use that word lift you up very intentionally. We all have people in our life that can suck us dry, right? I'm sure as I say that, everybody can come up with someone that they think of that they can't sever the relationship, because maybe it's a work relationship or it's an in-law, but we can set boundaries. We don't have to let that sponge of ours be wrung dry. We can fill it with people that fill us up, who give us space to be ourselves, who gives us space to cry and doesn't try to fix it, who gives us space to laugh or to not think about cancer for a while, or who gives us space to talk about and think about cancer, right? Thinking about the people that can bring you joy and those activities that bring you joy are so important. And lastly, I want to just again reiterate how getting support can help. Support groups can be an invaluable tool to normalizing, learning new skills, laughing, sharing fear, sharing hope. I would say to be aware when looking for online groups that the groups facilitated by a professional are the ones that, as a professional, I advise people to look for, just because they're moderated. They are they give space that is safe to be open without one person kind of driving the conversation or a lot of negativity or fear being brought in. And counseling, such an important tool to have in your toolbox, that when you need that extra help, when you need to process something, when you need to learn some new skills to manage depression or anxiety or stressors in your relationship, counseling is an invaluable resource. I love how helpful friends try to be. This cartoon makes me laugh. I'm fluent in several languages. I speak schmooze, spin, evasion, bull, and plain old common sense. And I always add, and don't forget, I speak cancer too. Again, our friends are well-intended. Our families are well-intended. They suddenly want to help by becoming experts in cancer, experts in guiding you on all the things you should be doing. And so knowing how to manage that is another part of your relational health. How do we set boundaries with people we love? If somebody questions why you aren't doing something, or that you should consider this because they had a friend who had a friend who had a friend who had a friend that did it, and they were cured right away, it's okay to question that. And responding by saying, thank you, I feel confident in my doctors and my plan, or thank you, I'm not interested in pursuing that clinical trial yet, doesn't mean you aren't fighting hard enough, or that you aren't getting all the information. I think sometimes when people challenge us, like, why are you taking a break from treatment? Or why are you not going to this doctor? It's heard as, I'm not doing the right thing, or I'm not fighting hard enough, or I'm not doing it enough. I just want to challenge you that that's not at all what that means, right? If you feel confident in your treatment plan, if you feel like you need to take a break and your team is supporting you in that, you are making an informed choice and doing what you need to live your life. And when you have those comments, being able to set boundaries with them is important. And you can do that through using a blog, an email communication saying, here is what I need, here is what I don't need, to communicate your needs and to communicate your own emotional experience. What is this journey like for you? And what can they do to show up for you? And what could they do that might shut a door? Be aware that oftentimes when people are giving well-intended advice, 99% of the time it's about them. It's about managing their own anxiety. It's about their fear of the unknown. It's about their fear of losing you. And so it comes from a well-intended place. And being dismissive may not be helpful, but acknowledging that it comes from a well-intended place and reassuring them can be really helpful. And saying no thank you or not at this time without feeling guilty is also really important. So for example, I know you are trying to help and offer things that you think might be helpful, but it sounds as if you don't trust that I am with the right team, making the right treatment decisions, etc. And naming that and then saying, I feel really good about where I am. Or if I begin to question, I will let you know and let you make that introduction. Other boundary setting is choosing wisely. So I mentioned that kind of sponge squeeze, right? We have the opportunity to really think about who in our life fills us up and who drains us. And there are people that drain us that we don't need in our life, and we have been looking for a way out. Well, cancer can provide you that way out. You certainly can pull the cancer card on severing certain relationships that are not helpful to you, because it is so important to surround people who lift you up, who believe in you, who support the decisions you make, even if maybe they don't think it's the right decision. You can say comments to people who tell you, just be hopeful, be happy, just be positive. It's not helpful when you say to me, everything is going to be okay, or everything happens for a reason. What I need is for you to listen, or to tell me that this frustrates you too, or to tell me that this scares you too. This cartoon always makes me laugh. You notice the woman saying, when you've been married a long time, you get to know what the other person thinks, and her husband is saying, no, you don't. I often think we default to this in our relationships, friendships, long-term friendships, as well as partnerships. We expect our friends or our partners to know what we need. We expect them to know that what they say is or isn't helpful. And unfortunately, no matter how long you've been in a partnership, no matter how long you've been friends, this is often not the case. And cancer is new to all of us. So we have to communicate our needs. We can do that through a structure called fact, belief, feeling, and action. For example, ever since I told you that I am anxious about my future, you stopped sharing things in your own life. I think it's because you're worried it will make me upset. But that makes me feel more isolated and alone when you don't share what is happening in your world. And then you tell them what you need. We'd usually do good at the first three, but the last one we struggle with. Your life is important to me, and I would like for us to talk about non-cancer stuff often. And I need you to call me about the stupid things that you used to call me about when your cat ate too much food or got into your laundry, right? Tell me about those things. I need to be connected to everyday life. You can use this tool when you're talking to your partner as well. If intimacy has been challenged, talking about that ever since we tried to have sex and it hurt, you stopped initiating sensual touch. I think that's because you're afraid you're going to hurt me or that I'll be upset. But that makes me feel sad and alone. And it's important, that part is an important part of our relationship that I want to keep. So I would like to spend more time cuddling or exploring other ways to be physically connected that is pleasurable for both of us. Communicating needs seems so silly at times and yet so obvious. We don't read each other's minds. We may get a sense of a passive-aggressive behavior and be able to connect that, but if we can just be open so we don't have to be passive-aggressive or just aggressive and be annoyed when our partner doesn't do what we think that they should know that we need, or our friend doesn't do what we think they should know that we need, and be able to state a fact, belief, feeling, and action in a way that allows them to meet your needs is so important. The key is, after they do the thing you've asked, we cannot go back and say, you're only doing that because I asked you to. We've got to give them space to create change and recognize, isn't it a great thing that they are doing that because we asked them to, which means they listened to us, they care about us, and they heard what we needed. So as we wrap up our time together, I really think as we wrap up thinking about our relational and emotional health, thinking about joy. I love the movie Inside Out. It is one of my favorite movies, both as a therapist, but also as a mom, watching my children's development and noticing, especially I have a son who is 13, and watching this shift in his prepubescent to pubescent brain, all the emotions getting flooded and it being all over the place. Inside Out has all these characters representing our common feelings: fear, worry, anger, joy, sadness. And joy tries to be present in the midst of all of these feelings. Through the movie, joy just tries to cheer up the other feelings or silence the other feelings and be the dominant feeling. And throughout the journey of all these feelings coexisting in this little girl's brain, joy learns that joy can be present with both, that it can be sad and joyful. And so I think, again, when we think about maintaining joy and balance in one's life while living with the uncertainty, which we all live with, cancer or no cancer. We often think that before cancer we had certainty, there wasn't as much ambiguity, and cancer just shines a really bright light on the fact that life is uncertain. So we've all heard the cliche, we all live with uncertainty or nothing is guaranteed. But is there an opportunity to seek change? Can we seek joyful things in our life? Can we find the things that bring us joy? We can make choice in seeking joy. We don't have to wait for joy to fall on our lap. It is absolutely an action-oriented feeling. We can look and find and surround ourselves with the things that help us maintain joy while still living in the unknown, while still being scared. And as you reclaim some of your life, that window, the one that is in the background that we keep looking at, all that scary stuff that's coming towards us, gets a little foggier, and what are we seeing? Just the window in front of us. We're starting to see that what is in front of us is possible. And that little voice in the back of our head, that worry brain, the fear brain, can get a little bit quieter until the next trigger, but then we can again use those skills to reframe, redirect, give a better feeling thought. And for coping, I think so often this idea of coping is you just must be hopeful. And I loved this quote because mostly it says the opposite, that successful coping is not about having a positive outlook or striving for a cheery disposition. Rather, studies show that coping in a way that is familiar to you, which could involve anything from stress relief to exercise, can help. In essence, people with cancer should be encouraged to develop realistic expectations about their illness so they can make good decisions about their care and not be pressured to be blindly positive. Also said, a person with true hope will experience a wide range of negative and positive emotions, yet through all of the difficulties, will try to move forward in life. So using that toolkit for your emotional well-being, using that toolkit for your relational well-being can help you continue to move forward in life. So which choice will you make? We can look and stay stuck on the negative, because there is negative in our life for sure. Or we can recognize there's negative in our life and make a choice to look out the other side of the window, to look at what is possible today, what can be joyful today. We can be facing an unknown future and still find hope in today. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best on your journey in building that toolkit for your strongest sense of your emotional self and your relational self as you go forward and live as well as you possibly can.